Chris Ann was born and raised in St. Louis, Missouri. She began her career as a biochemist, a Russian linguist for the U.S. Army, a prosecutor for the state of Florida. She also practiced First Amendment law for a prominent national nonprofit law firm. She joins us now on the phone. Chris Ann, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much. I'm just excited to be here.
I am too, and I want to thank the people that put us together, made this interview happen, because very excited. I've been watching a lot of your videos, listening to your discussions and your educational efforts of grassroots people trying to make a difference, trying to let them realize the benefits of our freedom and our individual rights and the Constitution of the United States. Can you share with our audience a little bit about how you got started in all of this?
Well, I went to law school and learned about the law. And while I was in law school, I came across some friends. I made some friends in the Federalist Society, began reading about the founders. I just happened across a book called here we go. I've already forgotten the name of the book. Oh, The Founding Brothers. And I read it. It was real short story, just a collection of short stories, and it was a real interesting, quick read. And it made me interested in the founders themselves. So I began reading their writing. And it sort of, doing that sparked the inner rebel in me, because I began to realize that what I was learning in law school had absolutely nothing to do with the Constitution itself. And as a matter of fact, as I took the constitutional law class that I had, I realized that much of what I was learning was actually contrary to the Constitution. And so it made me want to know, the truth. It sort of made me angry that we were supposedly learning the Constitution. We were going to be taking an oath to the Constitution, and yet we were learning really nothing about it. And, it's sort of a long kind of journey, just picking it up here and there. And then I was a prosecutor, then I went to work for the First Amendment law firm. And then after my sabbatical with the First Amendment nonprofit was over, I went back to the state attorney's office, where a new state attorney, a former coworker, had been elected. And I didn't realize that we had differing ideologies. And so when I live in a small rural community, and the people knew what I had, began to learn what I had been practicing in First Amendment law. So I was invited by the school board to come and teach them on how to have prayer before the school board meeting and not have the ACLU all over them. And I started teaching in a program we have here in Florida called Justice Teaching, where lawyers and judges go into the schools and teach on the First Amendment. And then I started speaking at local civics groups, like the Tea Party groups, and was invited to speak on the radio about the unconstitutionality of Obamacare. And apparently my boss heard that interview and started looking into my after-hours activities and decided that he didn't like them. And so he sent me an email and told me that I had to cease and desist all my association with right-wing fringe groups, those fifth graders that I was teaching. And I had to stop teaching the Constitution the way I was teaching it, because to teach that the Constitution, he said, required limited government was an ethical conflict of interest for anyone who worked for the government. And so I simply explained to him, I'm doing this on my own time. I'm not talking about my job. I'm not talking about you. This is all my stuff. And you don't have the authority or the right to tell me what I can and can do on my own time. And he simply said that he didn't care what...
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for being with us. You have found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We're building a liberty machine. We want you to be a part of the program. One of the ways you can do that is to call us or text us. The number 870-275-9799. You can also go over to facebook.com/Conduit News. That's facebook.com/Conduit News. If you would like to sound off and be a part of the Facebook live viewing, the live streaming we got going on right now. Wow, what a day yesterday was. 24 hours ago, we were telling you that President Donald Trump was in the process or was about to meet with President Vladimir Putin. We're going to have all of the fallout on that and what happened after their one-on-one meeting, specifically what President Donald Trump said at the press conference that has everyone on the left and some Republicans in a tizzy this morning, in an absolute tizzy. President Donald Trump asking questions about the mainstream media narrative that you're just not supposed to ask. It was interesting to see American politics boil over with a summit with President Vladimir Putin. And the left's going to say, the media complex is going to say, politics ends at the border. But in reality, this was an attempt to get President Donald Trump to kiss the ring, to bow down to their narrative, and he chose not to do it. I closed the program yesterday by telling you what seems to be emerging here with the fact that on the Friday before the Russian summit, the Justice Department indicts 13 Russians. I said, it seems like that somebody doesn't want this meeting with President Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin to happen. And what I said at the end of the show yesterday, when we were wrapping things up, I said, it appears that our government is looking less and less monolithic, meaning not unified. I mean, I think we know that. Obviously, politically, we know that. But the real story is these agencies are operating, supposedly, under the authority of the executive branch of our government, and yet they are not, it doesn't seem like they know where their authority comes from, That seems to be what's going on. It's exposing the concept that our government doesn't seem to be unified or monolithic. It seems to be, in many cases, you have these different arms working against each other, is what it seems to me. I mean, the President of the United States going on a diplomatic mission abroad, and one of the heads of state, he's going to meet Russia, and it's politically timed so that when President Putin and Donald Trump are on the stage, as I mentioned yesterday, they're not talking about what they might discuss. They're talking about the 12 indicted Russians. It's quite fascinating. Mark my words, if the last year and a half is any indication, the media spinning out the way they're doing all yesterday, all day today, it seems like every time this happens, they fall into their own traps for the president. But we will wait and see. Folks, we do have a great show for you today. Coming up this hour, we're going to be having a Conduit for Commerce policy segment. Going to be talking about workforce training. Yeah, that's right. You know, workforce training. You know, the same people who are having trouble producing, people ready to go in the workforce after they've had them for 13 years of their life. That same government is now trying to figure out how to train them and use workforce training. We'll talk about that, how wise it is. Also, we have some news on the Arkansas works requirement, the work requirement. You know, if you work 30 hours a week, then you wouldn't qualify for the program. So how is it a work requirement if you were to work 30 hours a week, you wouldn't qualify for the program? Isn't that strange? I mean, we could probably add that whole concept to what's coming up later next hour, which is we're going to talk about carefully crafted language, remind you what that is, and show you an example of it. So we'll have a carefully crafted language segment as well. At the top of the next hour, Max Brantley with more on the Arkansas teacher retirement appearance of a scandal. That's certainly interesting what he wrote over at the Arkansas Times. And if we have time, we'll get into a back and forth between school choice. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? A lot of people have been talking about that recently. At the bottom of the next hour, I want to introduce you to Mr. Matt Giberson, who is coming out with this concept of interviewing libertarian candidates. He calls it free TV. He's got his first episode up on the YouTube and interviews Mr. Whit Hyman, who we had on the program yesterday. I just think it's interesting and want to allow this platform. I want to introduce you to Mr. Matt Giberson. All this coming up on the program today. Let's start with what happened yesterday in Helsinki, though. Wow. Now, before we get to any of the audio, what I first thought was I saw some of these headlines. Let's go to this, the France press. The France press, Trump attacks U.S. foolishness heading into Putin's showdown. Okay, that's the first headline. I was like, okay. Then you go over to Yahoo. Kicking off the summit with Russia's Putin, Trump says, I really think the world wants to see us get along. I think the world definitely wants to see Russia and the United States get along. It seems like the mainstream media and some other forces don't want that to take place for whatever reason. I thought the left, by the way, was supposed to be anti-war. Isn't the left supposed to be anti-war and what do they call it? What was it? Barack Obama's anti-colonialism, anti-imperialism, and yet it's almost like they want Russia to become U.S. territory or something. That's what it seems to me. This other headline here, which says EU official, so the European Union, seems like they're very worried about a Trump-Putin meeting. EU official urges Trump-Putin not to destroy the global order. Interesting. The global order. So what is all the hubbub about? Well, it comes with this question. Go to realclearpolitics.com, which if you ever want good videos and you want up-to-date videos and audio, that's a great website for you to go to. They have a lot of good library there. Here's the first one. Let's go to the first clip. This is what you've probably already heard. Here's Trump with President Putin, asked about who's to blame. President Trump says, I hold both countries to blame. Listen to what he said.
Mr. President, you tweeted this morning that it's U.S. foolishness, stupidity, and the Mueller probe that is responsible for the decline in U.S. relations with Russia. Do you hold Russia at all accountable for anything in particular? And if so, what would you consider them that they are responsible for?
Yes, I do. I hold both countries responsible. I think that the United States has been foolish. I think we've all been foolish. We should have had this dialogue a long time ago, a long time, frankly, before I got to office. And I think we're all to blame. I think that the United States now has stepped forward along with Russia, and we're getting together, and we have a chance to do some great things, whether it's nuclear proliferation in terms of stopping. We have to do it. Ultimately, that's probably the most important thing that we can be working on. But I do feel that we have Both made some mistakes. I think that the probe is a disaster for our country. I think it's kept us apart. It's kept us separated. There was no collusion at all. Everybody knows it. People are being brought out to the fore. So far that I know, virtually none of it related to the campaign. And they're going to have to try really hard to find somebody that did relate to the campaign. That was a clean campaign. I beat Hillary Clinton easily, and frankly, we beat her. And I'm not even saying from the standpoint, we won that race. And it's a shame that there can even be a little bit of a cloud over it. People know that, people understand it, but the main thing, and we discussed this also, is zero collusion. And it has had a negative impact upon the relationship of the two largest nuclear powers in the world. We have 90% of nuclear power between the two countries. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous what's going on with the probe.
All right,
For
stop.
President Putin, if I could follow up as well.
So that's the first one that has gotten everybody in a tiz. Well, not me in a tiz, but I mean it's gotten a lot of people in a tiz. They're very upset. How dare he say, or he tweeted, how dare he refer to foolishness of both countries and that sort of thing. I mean, I just want to remind you for a second. I don't know if anybody remembers this, but during the 2016 presidential campaign, they talked about Russia a lot. The Clintons talked about Russia. Donald Trump was asked about Russia. And from my standpoint, I remember how I felt, and I was crystal clear about this with this audience. And it was essentially, who has the feeling that if Hillary Clinton gets elected, that there's going to be some provocation with Russia, whether it's a proxy war in Syria or whatever. Anybody? And I raised my hand. I was thinking, yeah, absolutely. Well, if there were plans to do such a thing, clearly the election of President Donald Trump took us in a different direction. And ever since then, we can't believe that Hillary lost. Hillary was never supposed to lose. We never thought she would lose, and so it's got to be Russia, Russia, Russia. It's all a conspiracy. Russia was involved. Russia changed votes. Russia hacked the elections. Now it's Russia hacked the DNC server. Oh, and by the way, though, the FBI never got to look at the DNC server. Can you imagine if you had a break-in at your house and you called the cops, and the cops showed up, and you told them what happened, and they asked to examine the evidence so they could attempt to solve the crime and catch the guy who broke into your house, and you told them, no, never mind. You think that would be suspicious? Do you think that the police would leave? Do you think they might come back and be like, oh, what in your house is it that you didn't want us to see? They stole my drugs. Okay, there, I said it. They broke in to steal my drugs. And you were dumb enough to call the cops. That's essentially what we have here with the DNC hack, if you will. By the way, I was listening to the radio the other day, and I heard something that I didn't know. But, with the indictment, with the Mueller probe and the indictment of these Russians, we're never going to get to see the evidence. There's never going to be a part of a trial where the government actually has to reveal what evidence they have. Now, think about that for a second. You had Hillary Clinton during the campaign saying, 13 intelligence agencies say that it was Russia. And now what do we hear again? All these intelligence agencies once again say that it was Russia. But will the American people ever actually get to see the evidence? And the speculation is right now that the answer is no. We will never get to see the actual evidence of what the government, or again, a part of our government, that at this point, again, in my opinion, doesn't look to be monolithic and unified at all. Case in point, the next audio clip. You want to know why our government's not monolithic right now and there seems to be competing forces into settling on what the truth is? Well, it's the fact that Donald Trump was asked this question and answered this way. Listen.
A question for each president. President Trump,
yes.
You first. Just now, President Putin denied having anything to do with the election interference in 2016. Every U.S. intelligence agency has concluded that Russia did.
Every U.S. intelligence agency.
My first question for you, sir, is who do you believe?
What about the
My
NSA?
second question is, would you now, with the whole world watching, tell President Putin, would you denounce what happened in 2016, and would you warn him to never do it again?
So let me just say that we have two thoughts. You have groups that are wondering why the FBI never took the server. Haven't they taken the server? Why was the FBI told to leave the office of the Democratic National Committee? I've been wondering that. I've been asking that for months and months, and I've been tweeting it out and calling it out on social media. Where is the server? I want to know, where is the server, and what is the server saying? With that being said, all I can do is ask the question. My people came to me, Dan Coates came to me, and some others. They said they think it's Russia. I have President Putin. He just said it's not Russia. I will say this. I don't see any reason why it would be, but I really do want to see the server. But I have confidence in both parties. I really believe that this will probably go on for a while, but I don't think it can go on without finding out what happened to the server. What happened to the servers of the Pakistani gentlemen that worked on the DNC? Where are those servers?
The Awan brothers.
Where are they? What happened to Hillary Clinton's emails? 33,000 emails gone, just gone. I think in Russia they wouldn't be gone so easily. I think it's a disgrace that we can't get Hillary Clinton's 33,000 emails. So I have great confidence in my intelligence people, but I will tell you that President Putin was extremely strong and powerful in his denial today. And what he did is an incredible offer. He offered to have the people working on the case come and work with their investigators with respect to the 12 people. I think that's an incredible offer.
Does President Trump know something that the general public doesn't know yet? That's my first gut feeling here. Does he know something the general public doesn't know? Obviously, he knows a lot the general public doesn't know. He's the president of the United States. President Vladimir Putin. I don't want to let you listen to the translation. You know, it doesn't. But essentially, he said that these 12 Russian indicted these 12 indicted people or whatever. He said that they're no more representatives of the Russian government than George Soros is a representative of the American government, which I thought was, again, they're talking about stuff that you're not supposed to talk about. Both of these men are. He brings up the Awan brothers, the IT guys that were hired by Debbie Wasserman Schultz. What's that about? Remember, Debbie Wasserman Schultz threatened the Capitol Police because they had access to the server, and were wondering what this guy was doing. This is a big deal. I know I have to go to break, but I'm going to hold here for a second because I want to get to one more thing, Joe. Joe's pestering me. Go to the next clip. What did the media do? After you hear those two clips of Donald Trump, what did the media do? No, not that one. It's Newsbusters. So over at Newsbusters, they put together that video right there. Go ahead and hit play on that and enjoy. This is the meltdown. I mean, they think that those two statements made this whole thing. This is an embarrassment, and now all of a sudden, those on the left are worried about America's forceful colonial might. The idea of you would think they were all excited about rah, rah, America, look at us and our military might, which most of the time that's the complete opposite. That they don't ever agree with that kind of stuff. Listen to this.
Was on stage left in Helsinki alongside the President of the United States, who had nothing but warm words for the time that they spent together.
First of all, I just have to say I'm sick to my stomach. I'm really feeling nauseous.
Stunned, gobsmacked.
We're hearing words like, I feel sick, this is frightening, calling it an abomination.
Shocking.
Stunning. Genuinely stunning.
What is going on? Unbelievable.
Astonishing. Just astonishing.
It is astonishing, it's heartbreaking, and it represents, I think, a pivotal turn in our nation's history.
It's time for Americans to be out on the street.
There are people protesting in the streets every day in the 70s. Why is that not happening now?
When do we see almost a shadow government come out and say, We cannot side with the government.
As an American citizen, I just personally think today is just an incredibly depressing moment in our time, in our history as an American. Was this a new low? Jim Sciutto, Josh Campbell, I appreciate you both being with us on what has been really a difficult day for this country and frankly for much of the free world ahead.
He didn't even meet his own low bar for not screwing this up.
I mean, it is an absolute disgrace. It's a parody of a disgrace.
This entire week of President Trump abroad has made Hillary Clinton seem all the more prescient.
All he had to do was not, put on jammies and crawl under the covers with Vladimir Putin, and he couldn't do that.
Do White House officials realize how horrified so many Americans are today?
Horrified.
Putin now is the master puppeteer of Donald Trump.
If Vladimir Putin picked our president, does anything else matter?
That is, again, that's what the Media Research Center over at Newsbusters, they put together that montage of the, I guess you call it the lamentations of the controlled narrative mainstream media. We got to take a break. Back in a moment.
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Did you guys hear in that Media Research Center Newsbusters montage of the media's lamentations about what happened in Helsinki? Did you hear one guy say, when is a shadow government going to rise up? That was actually a former CIA intelligence official named Philip Mudd, whose name is literally Mudd. CNN analyst as well. He wondered aloud Monday, according to Joshua Kaplan over at Breitbart, when a shadow government will emerge to oppose President Donald Trump following a joint press conference with the Russian president in Helsinki. Here's Josh Kaplan on Twitter. CNN analyst Philip Mudd chillingly raises the prospect of a shadow government taking on President Trump following the summit with Putin. It sounded like this. Anderson Cooper, Senator McCain is saying the joint Trump-Putin press conference was the most disgraceful display essentially by an American president on the world stage. Phil, do you agree with that? Mudd says, I do, but have to take a step back even a short time after this and say, what next? You've seen senators come out in the past. You've seen a senator in the midst of a painful illness, Senator McCain. Senators like Jeff Flake, who are leaving the Senate. Now you see Marco Rubio still obviously in the fight speaking out. My question would be, when do members of the president's inner circle say, look, we have an overseas dilemma where you are portraying us in terms of the American government as worse than a tyrant, that is Vladimir Putin? Secretary of Homeland Security came out with statements this week about continued Russian interference. This was not on Obama's watch. Curious point in American government, when do we see almost a shadow government come out and say we cannot side with the government, whether it's the Cabinet or the Senate? We'll be back in a moment.
Or what the First Amendment said. I could stop speaking, or I could work for him. And so, long story short, my husband and I prayed about it, and we realized that it was really worth something to take a stand. So I told him that he was not the author of my rights, and I wasn't going to trade them for his paycheck. And so he told me I had to quit, and I told him I'm not quitting, so he fired me. And that's what got me started independently. And so that was 8 years ago now. And for the last 7 years, we've taught about 265 classes in over 22 states every single year. I've written 6 books. I have a radio show that's globally heard and nationally syndicated. And we have Liberty First University now, which is online educational training, video format, learn at your own pace. And we are teaching people all over the globe about liberty from ages 6 to 106.
Wow. That is fantastic. What an amazing story. And I am, I know you're out over the outrage of being fired and, the ignorance of people who are, our public officials. But I'm sure a lot of our listeners who've heard that for the first time are just thinking, wow, how in the world could he do that or think that way? But I think that it's really interesting in terms of, you've taken the ignorance of your former boss and you're now combating that ignorance by traveling the country and teaching people what the truth is, in the concepts of limited government that is there, to protect our rights, not try to take them away from us.
Right. And we have such a great time. We teach all kinds of people. We teach in, believe it or not, we are invited into public schools, high school, middle school. We teach at colleges. I've taught the legislators of 10 states, and every year we pick up a new state or two. I have a law enforcement course that I teach across the country that several states have, sheriff's associations have approved my law enforcement class as continuing legal education for their officers, their deputies. And we're really, really excited. A lot of times people say, well, Christiane, what can you possibly be doing when you're teaching the choir? But I don't always teach the choir. As a matter of fact, just last November,
the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Yeah, so anyway, I kind of got caught up against a hard break, but we're just real quick. We're talking about this former CIA intelligence officer, Philip Mudd. Somebody on Facebook says his name spelled backwards is dumb. That's an astute observation. Yeah, it's actually M-U-D-D, so spelled backwards. That's dumb. Yeah, so this guy on CNN, in response to the media meltdown, just real quick, I got to move on here, but he said, speculated on a shadow government. When do you see a shadow government come out and say we cannot side with the government, whether it's the cabinet or the Senate? This is a typo here in this article. It says Babinet. And I pulled a Ron Burgundy when we went to break and just read Babinet. Anyway, I'm pretty sure that's meant to be cabinet. Curious point in American government. When do we see almost a shadow government come out and say we cannot side with the government, meaning the president? Interestingly, it's very interesting that you have this guy, Philip Mudd. Literally, his name is Mudd. And he's going on CNN questioning when the deep state, essentially confirming that there is one, is just going to... But first of all, in my opinion, as I see the headlines, they already have had enough. Why do you think the fact that Mueller came out and indicted those Russians 2 days before the summit was supposed to take place is case in point. They were trying to make sure this meeting didn't happen. And if it was going to happen, they were going to make sure they did everything they could to paint President Trump, to put all this pressure on President Trump. You better not look like, you better not be friends with him. You better not try to, at diplomacy. You better not. Oh, and we're going to ask you all these questions about election and electioneering and collusion, and you better bow down. You better accept the media narrative. You better criticize. You better do it. Do it. And then he didn't do it. President Trump didn't do it. Wow. Now, and they don't know what to do. And I'm telling you right now, it seems like, everyone is losing their minds. It seems like every time the president doesn't comply with the media narrative, the media tries to set the goalpost and says, this is where we can have an acceptable debate. And throughout his entire political career, from 2015 on, for the entire thing, he never accepts their presuppositions. He never allows that to, from what I can tell, he never allows that to be what formulates his responses and his thinking. And that drives them nuts because it's essentially robbing the media of control. Now, on that, I'll take that opportunity to talk about the whiteboard, what I have behind me, just very, very simply for those of you listening, the audio-only version of the program on terrestrial radio stations across the state. It just says free press, but it's in quotation marks. It's very like, okay, a free press. Do we have a free press? Now, obviously, we have the freedoms to report and and now with the internet, there's so many citizen journalists now, and it's a really, really good time. The internet being what it is, the type of communication, the level of speed in which you can get information to people is amazing, and it's actually really powerful in terms of, trying to protect freedom by getting people the information on what's actually happened. And this program right now is doing that. But then you get your mainstream media outlets. And so this is really just directed at the mainstream media outlets. I mean, is it really a free press? Now, if you just were to take this on the state level, and we've done this before, you can go look at maybe who advertises, okay, on certain outlets. If we just were to talk about Arkansas, you could look at the usual suspects. And there is some good reporting that's done. There is some good reporting that's done by some mainstream outlets in the state of Arkansas. I'm not going to sit here and say that there's never any good reporting that's done. Sometimes it feels like the reporting is done when the story is so patently obvious, but in terms of investigative, it's a little lacking for my taste, and I think I'm being generous there. But you know how I've been saying that you have government that lobbies for government. You have bureaucracies that lobby for themselves, and they shouldn't be allowed to do that. But then you'll have companies that attempt to get money from the government or secure a contract from the government, and then that company is then what? That company then may advertise, or that company may be expected, this is the way things are done in Arkansas, to tithe a portion of that taxpayer dollar to a political action committee. And then that political action committee keeps the status quo, kind of keeps everybody happy. This is the way things work here in Arkansas. And I think that has some bearing on the, quote, free and free press. Because if you were to get a little too much enthusiasm for investigating the government, or maybe having what I've been calling a very healthy skepticism of American government, there is now leverage out there, potentially, for you. To make sure, well, we're going to give you guys access, and we're going to continue, but we really, there's an amazing dog show down the street. It's a very, very important information that your readers or your subscribers or your consumers need to know about the dog show down here. Maybe they don't need to know a whole lot about this other stuff, like preferred family health care and this idea that every legislator now is a consultant if they want to be, and we don't need to know about that. The reason I say that is because while we may know a lot of what's going on now because of Missouri, not because of Arkansas, because of Missouri, everybody knew this was going on, and they knew about these these problems, these issues. Think about that for a second. Why is it that we know about preferred family health care? Well, it's because of the federal courts in Missouri. Where are our federal prosecutors? Where is Arkansas in this? It's a fair question. Telephone number 870-275-9799. Now, you compare the idea of a free press to the national mainstream media, the corporate giants, if you will, and you go further down in the rabbit hole, quite frankly. You have some, with the emergence of the internet and the success there on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., that have proposed new regulations on journalists wanting you to actually have to have a license, which would actually be the first instance that I can see of trying to treat the First Amendment like many of us believe the Second Amendment should be treated, with selling your rights back to you. You can have your Second Amendment so long as we approve. You can have your right to be a journalist or a free press so long as you're properly vetted and we know you're not. As long as you're going to play the game. There are ideas out there to do that because the internet, and what are they, to try to compete with fake news, as they say. Because it wasn't just the Russians. It was also the fact that, well, there's just too many dumb Americans that can't tell a fake news story on Facebook, and it cycles through, and that's what swung the election. I mean, that's what they are. That's what they are trying to put out there. That's why there's got to be new regulations and everything. And Facebook has got to change their policy. They now got to have a fake news button. Give me a break. Telephone number 870-275-9799. We'll talk more about the whiteboard throughout the rest of the week. Folks, the next segment I want to talk about, this is brought to you by Conduit for Commerce. Conduit for Commerce is, they're putting Arkansas small business first. Matter of fact, go to conduitforcommerce.org right now, and you can see the great work that they're doing. They've got great policies up there for you to read. They also have a way, basically, if you want to, you can contribute to the mission of supporting small businesses financially, monetarily. You can do that. There's a support button on there. But Arkansas small business comes first, and that's what you need to know. There was a time when you had something like the Chambers of Commerce. There was a time where the Chambers of Commerce were not for big government in terms of using the government to try to create jobs, but Chambers of Commerce used to be more for your local business, more about, well, we know how business works, and so the small businessman doesn't need higher taxes. The small businessman doesn't need a government that goes into debt. The small businessman needs to be left alone so he can create those jobs. The Chamber of Commerce used to have that kind of mindset, and now they still try to have it, or they try to put out that perception. But if you look at how a lot of chambers are intertwined, where you don't know where the government ends and their mission begins, I don't think that's healthy. And I think that's gotten away from their original mission. But if you want the original mission, the original vision, the motivations, you go to conduitforcommerce.org and check them out. And you can click the Support Our Cause button. Well, so this segment's brought to you by them, and we're going to talk about this concept of workforce training. I saw in the Gazette the other day, was it $13 million Is that what it was? $13.6 million are being funneled into the school-to-work program. It's got me thinking about the concept of you know, how much money is enough money? That would be my first question. Before we get to the work training program article, go to this one, Joe. This was back on the 6th of July, caught my attention. Search by school/grade, more work to do after mixed results in statewide tests, according to the Arkansas Education Department. See, we've got the test scores in for our kids. You know, all this money that you're paying in property tax, all this money that you're paying in state taxes, it's going to fund education. And so they do the standardized testing. You know, they need to stress the kids out for a certain amount of time. And so they do the ACT Aspire. Man, the ACT Aspire. I love names, you know, that are trying to make kids like taking standardized tests is fun. Don't you want to aspire? The ACT Aspire exams were given to about 300,000 students in grades 3 through 10. Statewide results from the tests in English, reading, math, and science were mixed, with some graders performing better in 2017-2018 academic year than the same grades did in 2016-27 school year, while achievement percentages dipped in other grades. So it's a mixed bag. We still have work to do. We still have more work to do. Folks, in Arkansas, the fact is that we have a skilled workforce shortage here, meaning our skilled labor is, well, it leaves a lot to be desired here. And you can ask businesses who need skilled labor this question, and they'll tell you they do have trouble with this. And so you have this I guess it's a motivation. So we've got to try to fix this. Well, I think we need to, and I know this is a big picture thing, and a lot of people would say, no, let's just keep throwing money to the same bureaucrats. But we need to admit something for a second. If we are spending money, now you seriously ask yourself the question. If we are spending money and our tax dollars are going to our education system, and we are giving our kids to the state, essentially, for 7 hours a day, and they have them now for as many as 13 years, and at the end of the 13 years, they're not ready to get a job. Now, I know this is a whole other can of worms, because you got also a school system that says you're not going to be a success unless you go to college and you know, graduate 4 years from now with $30,000 in debt. You will not be a success unless you first have that $30,000 in debt. I think this is we've got to have a shift. Colleges for some, colleges for others. That doesn't mean that you can't go out, become an apprentice, and make $50,000 a year as a welder. Those jobs are out there. These skilled workforce, these skilled labor jobs are out there. We need to ask ourselves the question. I mean, in any society, I mean, if you were setting up or building a society from scratch on a desert island, would you want people to be in a school system for 13 years and still not know how to work? How would you ever build anything? How would you ever do anything, right? I mean, the greatest generation, you had kids 16, 17, 18 years old. And I say 16, 17 because they would lie to go into the military because they wanted to serve their country. You had 18, 19-year-old kids, you know, in war, flying planes in some instances. You grow up pretty fast when you do that type of stuff, right? But we have this concept of extended adolescence and everything else. And so now they don't want to call it that, right? They don't want to call it that. But what we're essentially doing with workforce training is saying, well, we've had them for 13 years. And we need to add a little bit more money, and we need to have them for, I don't know, 14 years or 15 years. Or maybe we'll have them for 13 years of their life, right? kindergarten, 1 through 12, and then maybe they'll graduate and we won't see them for a while, but eventually they'll come back and then we'll finish the job we started 13 years ago or 20 years ago or whatever. And then you look at these test scores, and we're trying to figure out, we're constantly, the education system constantly, we got to figure out how we doing. Hey, how's that teacher doing? What's that teacher doing? What's that teacher teaching? What's she doing? Does she need textbooks? I don't think she needs textbooks anymore. Oh, okay, all right. So then the teacher's just going to be staying after school making copies because they still got to give the students something. Oh, okay, you know what? Never mind. Now give them textbooks back. They need textbooks again. Then, well, what about? Can the parents understand what's in the textbooks? No. How much homework do they have? They have an infinite amount of homework. I mean, but how are we doing? What exactly is the curriculum, though? How are you saying it? I tell you what. Let's just replace all teachers with robots so the government can be sure they know everything that is said that comes out of the robot's mouth, so we know exactly what you said and what the test scores were. By the way, how we doing? How's the test scores? What's the test scores? We got to figure this out. I mean, It's like some sort of Rube Goldberg machine where you're trying to get an educated, productive member of society, but you're going through all of these steps that make really no sense and sometimes completely fail. Sometimes Rube Goldberg machines, you have the little funny mechanism that doesn't quite work the way you thought it was going to work. It's like anything when the government gets involved. It's between you and the outcome that you're trying to achieve. I'm not saying you abandon the public goal of educating citizens. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is it seems like we've tried to reinvent the wheel. I know some guys, who were in their 50s who had a much simpler schooling system in the state of Arkansas, and they're some of the smartest people I know. You go even before that, and the people that, launched the space program. What kind of school system were they in? What kind of curriculum did they have? Reading, writing, and arithmetic. Maybe we just need to get back to that. Now, on the other hand, with this work training, state school to work programs score $13.6 million in funds. Governor cites early success. Some of these small business owners, and if you're a small business owner out there and you need skilled labor, the thought of the government stepping in and training your future employees might be a little scary just in and of itself. We're talking about the government here. The government doesn't. A lot of these people that work for the government, they don't have their own business. Many of the business owners would like a blank slate. They'd like for them to be able to read, shocker, write, do some math, show up to work on time, be able to pass a drug test. What is that? 5 things? Reading, writing, arithmetic, show up to work on time, which would show work ethic, and pass a drug test. 5 things. 5 things. Could you just teach that? Could you just teach those things? Then you can leave it up to the business owner to then. Now, that's a hard thing. That you're exactly right. Is there a government program that can change the heart, that can change the will, meaning the will to act, the will to work, the will to create for yourself, the will to want to provide? If you don't have that, can the government, is there a government program or a workforce training program that would change that mentality? There very well may be. I don't know who has that information. You know what I think would be a lot better, though? Need. Genuine need. If someone genuinely needs to, let's say, eat, then I think that's a little bit of incentive to figure out how to get to work, right? Which is better, that or government program? The left is going to say government program. People in the middle are going to be like, well, there needs to be a careful balance. Look, if you're able to work, and you're not truly needy, and you're not disabled, we've got to get to a point where we say, okay, it's time to get to work. Now, on that, I'll have some Arkansas Works numbers for you when we come back. Don't go anywhere.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Arkansas Works numbers, but so we're gonna move that to the first of the hour coming up next, as well as get to a little bit more on this Arkansas teacher retirement situation. Still unclear if there was a $300 million windfall for the Arkansas teacher retirement system as a lead plaintiff for a class action lawsuit, $75 million in legal fees, $4.1 million as a referral to a lawyer in Texas for introducing the law firm to the Arkansas teacher retirement. People wondering, where did the $4.1 million end up? You know, it's crazy to think that Arkansas would ever be involved in any kind of corrupt situation, isn't it? I mean, it's just nuts. We've had a long, storied history of really having a government that is above board completely. I mean, from Al Capone to Bill Clinton to Rusty Cranford. I mean, it's just impeccable moral standards being adhered to.
The news and talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 1230 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
I taught an entire room full of of Bernie Sanders supporters, because since Trump has been in office, a whole new group of people want to learn about the Constitution. And frankly, we have found that the choir needs education on the Constitution and its applications and our history, because although we have a large number of people who believe in the relevance of the Constitution. They'll say we carry our Constitution with us all the time. It's one thing to hold the document in your hand. It's another thing to read the document, but it's a whole other level to understand why it says what it says, to the level that you can actually step up and be an advocate and a defender of the liberties of the people, and that's what we teach you to be.
Wow. We're talking with KrisAnne Hall. Up on her screen there that you see, if you're watching online, it says that she's a constitutional attorney. She's actually, much more than that. If you look at her resume, it's very, very impressive. When you said that when you were in law school and then you started reading about the founders and you realized, wow, I'm going to law school and I'm not learning anything about the Constitution. I have a family member who's an attorney, and she said the same thing, that it's, it's just more about case law. It's not actually about, the Constitution and what it means. And so I'm wondering, in the whole educational process, let's take public education, for example. Our kids aren't really learning the truth in school. I mean, maybe some of them are, but by and large, this is information that it seems like is contraband right now to the national education system.
You're absolutely right. And I will say that there are some that are learning because we have met teachers who take the time to teach, and like I said, who take the time to bring us in to teach. We have teachers say, KrisAnne, we need you to come into our schools because you can teach things we can't teach. And I think it's really, really an indictment on society that we don't do more to teach the Constitution and its relevance. I mean, we have an active effort in America, an overwhelming effort in America to teach our young people that the Constitution is not only irrelevant, but that the Constitution is actually a document of oppression to alienate entire generations, entire groups of American students. And so what we try to teach our teachers is that you actually have more latitude than what you believe you have. Most of our public school teachers don't realize that they have the ability to teach these things that are not in the textbooks, but they're bullied into believing that they don't. And if they don't have the support of their administration, then most schools allow their teachers to bring in outside speakers to teach. And if they're bringing in outside speakers to talk about global warming and environment and drug addiction, then they have to allow the teachers to bring in outside speakers to teach on the Constitution as well. And as a matter of fact, almost every single state in this union requires training on the Constitution at least, and I know this sounds crazy, but at least 1 week a month or 1 week a year, and that's through Constitution Week. And we've actually created and just released a Constitution Week DVD that is it's 6 short, less than 12-minute videos to teach one specific topic a day on the Constitution and allow the students to have real education on the Constitution, not revision or progress or Marxism. And we allow the students then to have discussion based on that truthful education. And people can get that Constitution Week DVD by going to libertyfirstuniversity.com and visiting the store that we have there. We have tons of educational DVDs, but I think that right now is probably our most popular.
Wow. I'm curious, KrisAnne, when you do travel the country and, you talk to people in the grassroots, and, you mentioned the choir.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Welcome, 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 ladies and gentlemen. This is hour number 2. Thanks so much for being with us. Good morning to you. My name is Paul. You have found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We're building a liberty machine. We want you to be a part of the program. You can call or text 870-275-9799. Sound off over at facebook.com/Conduit News, or you can comment as well on the YouTube channel, Conduit News. If you go to the YouTube channel, whether you get the previous hour or older broadcast or different videos, make sure you subscribe and hit the little bell so you'll receive notifications when we upload a new video to YouTube. And go live. It notifies you when we go live as well. So we're excited about that. Coming up on the program, I want to talk a little bit about Arkansas Works. I want to talk a little bit about carefully crafted language. I want to talk a little bit about the left in this country and why, I guess, their reasoning for their stubbornness, quite frankly, and why they can't understand why they keep losing elections. I'll talk about that in the first half hour. And then the bottom of the hour, Mr. Matt Giberson's going to be joining us. I want to introduce you to him and his project called Free TV, where he's going around the state and interviewing libertarian candidates. And they also are shooting guns. So that's always fun. All right. Let's start with the top story this morning, which would be the numbers are in on the work requirements when it comes to Arkansas Works and how many people have been affected. Now, there are almost 300,000 people on this program for able-to-work adults, most of whom don't have dependents, and a significant portion don't work at all. So the whole idea of a big government welfare program, socialized medicine, the whole excuse Republicans have been giving for not, doing away with it. And I'm talking about the establishment progressive Republicans that think it's the government's responsibility to pay for your health care. It only ensnared 25,000 people. 25,000 people, but it didn't even ensnare that many. Look at this graph. Will zoom in on this graph, Joe? Okay, work requirement compliance. Out of 25,815 people, which is actually out of 280,000, but 25,815 people in Obamacare Medicaid expansion, Arkansas Works, were subject to a work requirement last month. Out of the 25,000, 7,464 were found out of compliance. So you had the remainder of that 25,000, you had the remainder essentially saying we have exemptions. 15,515 of these people were saying, we automatically are exempt based on information in state records. Was saying, I have an excuse why I don't need to go look for a job or I don't need to go volunteer or all the other things. Now, keep in mind, Arkansas Works and the idea of a work requirement, that whole phrase is misleading because if you work 30 hours a week making minimum wage, then you will make more money, too much money, and you won't qualify to get the free health care. So think about that. We're a work requirement where we're trying to get people to work 29 hours a week. That's essentially, but if they go to 30, they're going to make too much money. Think about that for a second. That's very weird. 2,395 used a state website to report an exemption. 445 used the site to report 80 hours of work, training, or other activities. 445 people actually said that they were, quote, working or... I wonder out of the 445, out of that 445, how many actually worked a job versus did all of the other activities you can do to say you're looking for work. And then 7,464 did not meet the requirement. So let's just focus on that, right? If that same number right there, you see it on the screen, if 7,000 out of almost 300,000 people, if 7,464 of these people for the next 2 months in a row don't meet the requirements, they're going to lose their Blue Cross Blue Shield coverage. We have had countless debates over the last 3 years about the merits of this program. It has divided the Republican Party. Republicans in the leadership have bent over to keep a socialist health care program from a socialist president, his signature domestic achievement, Barack Obama. We were told it was all going to be okay if we just get the work requirements, and I just have to say, we went through all of that debate. So maybe 7,000 people will lose their plans for not working out of 300,000. I mean, does that embarrass anybody out there who really tied? If you even did, I don't really think you guys hitched your wagon to this work requirement. It's just a carefully crafted language buzzword, gets you from one crisis to the next, trying to hold on to your conservative credentials. They're faux conservative credentials. But I just think if I'm looking at this from the long view, I've been covering this story since 2013. I've been covering this story in depth since 2013 when this all started. And I just think it's a little disappointing. It's almost sad. I'm almost sad for these individuals. 7,464. Way to go, guys. If they don't find a way to log on to the website, and you've got the insurance companies who are going crazy, insurance companies trying to make sure these people know you got to go to the website and list your exemptions to keep your plan. Think about that for a second. Hey, Joe, real quick, get your calculator out. Get your calculator ready. Ready for this? So I need to know how much money. So let's assume that these 7,000 people who didn't turn in 2 months, and they do this for 2 more months consecutively, and they lose their insurance. How much money is Blue Cross Blue Shield losing if the average premium, whether you go to the doctor or not, is $500 a month for 7,464 people? How much money are we talking about? How much money did $7.5 million for 2 months? No, I always want per month, so 7,464 people, 3.8 million, and then multiply that times 12, and that would be almost 45 million. Is how much the insurance company loses if the 7,464 people actually lose their health insurance. Now, initially, okay, I want to do the math again, Joe. This is going to be a much larger number. There are 25,815 people that were initially flagged that got exemptions or were automatically exempt. But I just wanted to put into context, if you reduce the Arkansas Works program by 25,000 people, just keep round number, 25,000 times $500, what is that per month?
I did that total.
Okay.
That number, it's almost $13 million.
$13 million a month.
Yeah.
times 12. $155 million. So if all of these 25,000 people were to lose their insurance because of the work requirements, how much is it again, Joe? 50. Did you say 50? Or you said 100? I can't remember. I'm sorry. $155 million. Do you think that the insurance companies in the healthcare industrial complex, which I think we should just, you think they want these people to go to the website and put in some bogus exemption, or do you think they want to lose $155 million? We're talking about a lot of money here, folks. That's a ton of money a year. Interesting. 7,000 people. 7,000 people out of all of the debate, all of the legislative sleight of hand, the line item veto scheme that the governor did where he convinced Democrats to vote to end this program, but he promised them that he would mark out the part that ended it. Did all of that for 7,000 people out of 300,000 to maybe, if they do nothing for the next 2 months, to maybe lose their insurance. It's just kind of, like I said, it's sad. It's embarrassing. Anyway, the number 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. Over at the Arkansas Times, Max Brantley with a follow-up story yesterday about the Arkansas teacher retirement system and the involvement in this lawsuit, a class action lawsuit where the Arkansas teacher retirement system is the lead plaintiff. The Arkansas teacher retirement system, they get a $300 million verdict. They have $75 million in legal fees. Of that $75 million in legal fees, $4.1 million went as a referral fee to a Texas attorney for introducing the law firm with the Arkansas teacher retirement system. There has been some speculation as to what happened with the money. With the $4.1 million, did it go anywhere else? Max Brantley, it's the Arkansas Times article, Joe. Max Brantley reports on what Michael Wickline reported on in the Arkansas Democrat Gazette that appeared on Sunday. Max Brantley writes, here's what we know from a report to the court in Massachusetts and reporting by Mike Wickline of the Arkansas Democrat Gazette and reporting at the Arkansas blog. Has to do with the Arkansas teacher retirement system's involvement. A guy by the name of George Hopkins, who is a former state senator from Malvern. George Hopkins became the director of the Arkansas teacher retirement system. He told the Massachusetts court he wants the system to remain the lead plaintiff and thus eligible for enhanced recovery, despite a vote of the Arkansas Teacher Retirement's board saying that he drop that particular role. Questions on that are expected Tuesday. Today, the Joint Performance Review Committee, ladies and gentlemen, at the Marble Palace is going to meet and try to get to the bottom of what's going on with the Arkansas teacher retirement system. What's going on with their legal fees, what's going on with the referral fee. The allegations out there are that we may be looking at another kickback scheme. They're just allegations, and if I'm just going to throw this out there. If this Texas lawyer is completely, nothing, everything's above board. I'm just saying, if that's the case, this lawyer's got to be wondering, why in the world is everybody so sensitive in Arkansas? Like, what's going on? Well, do a little Google search. Just do a little Google search and see what we've been having to put up with. I mean, I imagine this person would be like, is it a she? I think it's referred to, she's a she. I imagine she'd be like, oh, I see why they're so skeptical, because there is a lot of corruption going on. I mean, just a long list. Just go down the list. Hank Wilkins, Mike and Neil, John Woods, Jake Files, Rusty Cranford, Warren Perry. I mean, I'm leaving some people out. Eddie Cooper, Preferred Family Healthcare. I mean, it's ridiculous. So we have, let's see here, George Hopkins. The Arkansas Teacher Retirement System filed papers on all the cases in which it is involved, reimbursements from the law firm so far, and the recently unsealed Massachusetts court report reviewing attorney fees in the case. A judge has said the Labaton Sucaro law firm did a good job, won the settlement, again, $300 million, but the questions, nonetheless, Max Brantley writes, raised about the $4.1 million finder's fee paid by Labaton to a Texas attorney, Damon Chargot. Okay. Texas attorney is named Damon, who introduced Labaton Sucaro, the lead law firm, to the Arkansas Teacher Retirement System. Labaton says finder's fees are illegal and didn't come out of the settlement, and it disputes ethical concerns raised by the special master. The presiding judge, nonetheless, suggested questions linger about whether payments stopped with the Texas lawyer. Did they end there? $4.1 million went to the lawyer. What did the lawyer do with that money? Did it all go to the lawyer? Or did it go elsewhere? Hopkins has testified that Steve Ferris, who succeeded Hopkins as a senator from Malvern, had introduced Labaton to Paul Doan, then director of the Arkansas Teacher Retirement System in 2007. Oh, by the way, do you see the revolving door that we have here from legislator to bureaucrat, legislator to bureaucrat? Does anyone see that? Everybody okay with that? Everybody comfortable with that? That's perfectly fine, right? Yeah. I think we need term limits. What about you? No? We got to take a break. I mean, I know people disagree with me, but there's also a lot of people that agree with me. Term limits, I believe, is the answer to some of this corruption. We'll be back in just a moment. Don't go anywhere.
In a world full of constituents with social media accounts, bloggers just looking to increase their page views, and a talk radio host who generally is just the worst, how are Little Rock's elite supposed to conduct business with such a lack of privacy? Introducing the 1835 Club, older and more refined than other clubs that claim discretion. The 1835 Club is for seasoned political veterans that want to conduct the highest form of aristocratic business with the public's money. Are you a schemer? Do you someday want a guaranteed flow of taxpayer money to support your business? Is it your dream to see the .gov domain at the end of your business website? Don't listen to the imitators. The 1835 Club is the place where corrupt politicians and businessmen hatch their next crony schemes. At the 1835 Club, we make lobbying safe and legal. Ethics. Why, of course. All business is done in an ethical manner. Just look for the sign above the door that reads, loophole. Are you tired of the Capitol Police restricting your access to the roof after a perfectly good night of drinking? The 1835 Club has libations and a perfectly good roof. Other crony clubs that promise discretion try to lure you in by advertising bars made out of aeroplanes. Well, at the 1835 Club, instead of an airplane fuselage, We've got a space shuttle. No, not a bar. We've got an actual space shuttle that makes a daily run to the moon so members of the 1835 Club can have some real privacy away from the bloggers and taxpayers. Are you an Arkansas aristocrat? Do you want to be? It's the 1835 Club, and we work tirelessly to make sure the good old boy system remains alive and well. Join today.
Disclaimer. The 1835 Club reserves the right to deny membership to anyone who has principles. Any talk of the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution must be done in jest or, at the very least, with a condescending tone. And finally, the 1835 Club will be given a 25% commission of any agreements made between politicians and the business community.
PHP Parody. Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
So, finishing up with this story, the Joint Performance Review going to be meeting, trying to get to the bottom of the Arkansas teacher retirement class action lawsuit, where they won $300 million, had $75 million in legal fees, but $4.1 million caught the attention of a judge. $4.1 million of the legal fees went to a separate attorney. And you have the director of the Arkansas Teacher Retirement Fund, former state senator Hopkins, George Hopkins himself, told the judge in the case that he'd gotten encouragement from political leaders to get involved in class action cases. Max Brantley writes, something he previously hadn't considered. Though not listed as attorney in the case, Chargot got a percentage of the Labaton Award. Chargot's the Texas attorney in the State Street case, as it has on at least 9 more cases. The special master in the case has faulted Hopkins for the plaintiff's lack of knowledge of the side payment to Chargot, or Chargois. I really don't have any idea. I know, I go back and forth. But Hopkins said that wasn't... I want names like Jones. Smith. Yeah, it's like... but Hopkins said that wasn't his responsibility. Still, the presiding judge had concerns. This is what the judge wrote. Quote, among other materials Labaton later turned over was a 2014 email in which Chargot complained about being undercompensated in some of the other cases. Quote, we got you the Arkansas teacher retirement as a client after considerable favors, money spent, and time dedicated in Arkansas. What does that mean? I think the time dedicated in Arkansas is almost more enticing, and kind of piques my interest than the favors. The money spent's a big one. So this is what the judge wrote about the possibility of where these legal fees went. Now, this next paragraph has to be read verbatim by Max Brantley. The next paragraph of this story you've got to read for yourself. Ferris is a Z-League figure in Arkansas politics. He first rose to my attention as a gatekeeper for Secretary of State Bill McEwen, who died in prison after conviction of public corruption. He went on to the Senate and then, despite being a Democrat, got brought on after he left office as the right-hand man to Republican Senate President pro tem Michael Lamoureux. Lamoureux's career was marked by the disclosure that he was paid while a legislator by special interest groups. He left abruptly as Governor Hutchinson's chief of staff after a short tenure to become a lobbyist. He has since been identified among the legislators who shipped state surplus money to the scandal enmeshed preferred family health care and affiliates, now suspended from $43 million in state contracts because of multiple fraud charges and convictions unrelated to Lamoureux. You see what Max Brantley did there? Unrelated to Lamoureux. He does leave out, though, that Lamoureux did give a bunch of money to Ecclesia College at the request of John Woods. By the way, I don't know how the state of Arkansas can continue to allow what went on with Ecclesia, and they're not pursuing any additional information. It is a shame that we're not getting any additional information. The state's not trying to audit. The state's not trying to get our money back. It's just very strange to me. That's a whole nother can of worms, but I think the people of Arkansas deserve to know what happened with that money. We're going to take a break. I'm going to introduce you to Mr. Matt Giberson of Free TV when we come back. People say, preaching to the choir or whatever. But, there are people that misunderstand certain aspects. Is there any one, reoccurring thing that people maybe say that's not quite right or quite accurate in the interpretation? What are you hearing out there from the grassroots?
Well, we teach the Constitution in a way that no one else teaches it. And I mean no one else. And so that gives us a certain little niche. And within that, we teach a lot of things that are just simply, and I'll just go forward and say, shocking to people to learn about the Constitution, about how easy it is to know and how relevant it is. But I think that there's probably, amongst those who are supporters of the Constitution, I think probably the most often misunderstood is the Supremacy Clause, and the idea that the Supremacy Clause in the Constitution, which is Article 6, Clause 2, creates a federal government that is superior to the state in all matters. Politicians say it, law professors say it, that it's the Supremacy Clause that makes federal laws and regulations superior to all state law and state constitutions, when that is simply and completely not true. The purpose of the Supremacy Clause is not to make the federal government superior. The purpose of the Supremacy Clause is to make the Constitution supreme, to put the federal government under the Constitution, and to declare that anything that the federal government does outside the Constitution is not binding upon the states and is simply no law at all. And so all the regulations that are created that are unconstitutional, all of the agencies that are created that are unconstitutional, and all of the laws that are and federal acts that are created are unconstitutional, to the founders who wrote the document, those acts and laws and regulations simply have no legal effect at all. And then to compound that, we have also an error in our understanding of judicial supremacy, that the Supreme Court is the ultimate arbiter of what is constitutional and not and what is not. And nothing could be simply further from the truth. That's actually a power that the Supreme Court invented for itself. The founders of our constitutional republic wanted the Supreme Court to be a judgment and guidance to the Constitution, and they don't have the authority to expand or sanction power beyond the grant of the Constitution any more than the
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the program. Thanks so much for being with us. I want to introduce you to Mr. Matt Giberson. Matt, welcome to Conduit News Radio. How are you this morning?
I'm all right, Paul. I'm just sucking down some caffeine trying to cope with reality, but I'll get there. Joe really liked that. Yeah, that's what we're trying to do, too. We're trying to cope with reality as well.
Matt, tell us about Free TV. What is Free TV, and what made you want to start this project?
Sure. So Free TV is going to be like a satirical, political social media channel focused on the Libertarian Party in Arkansas, and just trying to give them some credibility that the local news media doesn't seem to be doing. It was just kind of birthed out of me being tired of being just angry about politics. I want to actually do something about it. And so, I just took some time and and thought about my talents, my skill sets, and prayed about it. And I really feel like this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Awesome. So tell us about your talents. Let's just show some of your talents. This is your first episode. It's up on the YouTube channel. Again, free TV. Go ahead and show this, Joe, and we'll get Matt's response.
I'm Whit Hyman, and I approve this message.
You're wearing that Patriots of Act 746 hat. Yep, and then you get the logo, and then, of course, the interview starts. All right, so Matt, tell us a little bit about, does everybody that interviews with you that's a libertarian get to go out and shoot guns like that?
Oh, I mean, it doesn't. See, the thing is, it doesn't just have to be libertarians. I'm hoping to get everybody on there. 'Cause
okay.
I want free TV to be a voice of the people, but I myself am a libertarian, and I feel like as a libertarian, we have an obligation to be willing to at least hear good arguments from good local politicians. It doesn't mean we have to vote for them, but yes, the prerequisite to being on the show will be to go to the gun range with them.
Okay, good. Well, I think that's kind of a good
It'll
test.
filter out the chaff from the wheat. You know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so did you train for this? I mean, what's some of your background?
Well, I'm a Bible college graduate. Well, I'm a high school dropout who went to Bible college and graduated. And, after doing ministry for a few years, I won an essay contest with Dove Men Plus Care, chosen out of 20,000 applicants to win $5,000 to be my own boss and start my own business. So I had already started working on a business project with a guy, so that just kind of put the accelerator on. And we opened Mugshots Express, the coffee shop in Hot Springs, Arkansas, back in 2014. I sold it to my business partner the next year, and it's taken off and done great. They've just opened their second location in Malvern, and I stepped away from a few years. It was a wild ride, that experience, and chose to pretty much just live under a rock. I got rid of my television, I got rid of my smartphone, and just chose to focus on my family. And, after about 3 years of stepping aside, I just felt like it was time to step back into business, and I've chosen media and marketing and politics to do it. This business project is in conjunction with another business that I've just started called Mind Gap Media, and it's a social media marketing agency for local businesses.
Wow, man, that does sound like a wild ride. And so we're looking right now, for those of you watching the program over at Conduit News or Facebook.com/Conduit News or YouTube, we're playing episode 1 in the background of this interview with Mr. Whitfield Hyman, who was on the program yesterday. But so do you have some other episodes coming though, right? You've got other interviews lined up.
Oh yeah, I've already got an interview with Mark West done. Him and I are scheduling a time to go shoot. I've got, Tom Canada, Joe Swafford, Frank Gilbert, Michael Kalagius. Man, I mean, I've too many people. I've talked to Drew. Well, no, I haven't talked to Drew Tanner yet, but I've talked to several people who are already in lined up to do this with me. I'm filled up till at least November.
Mm-hmm. Well, so tell me about libertarians. Now, you say you'll talk to anybody. Because you're not afraid of ideas, and I think that's really powerful stuff. But I mean, what about? Are you yourself a libertarian? I guess.
I'm a new libertarian. I have not really chosen a political party ever, and so I've realized that at a certain point I'd have to get behind something, and I feel like while most of the average citizen may claim a political party, they're probably a libertarian and don't even realize it. And the only reason they don't realize it is because the media hasn't given them an opportunity to realize it. Because if enough people wake up to the power of the third party, they're going to jump ship. And so this project is all about just giving people a I'm giving libertarians a product that they can share with everybody else that they know that will get them to at least avail themselves to libertarian ideas.
And I think that's really, really healthy. I'm reading some of the comments on Facebook. Amy writes, "Pick me, pick me." We have people that want to be interviewed, I think, just because. What kind of gun is that? What kind of gun in that video that we just saw? Was he shooting?
I think that's a G36. I'll be honest, I'm not 100% sure. Those were not my firearms. I have an AR-15, but it is nothing like what we were firing. But we've talked to the folks down at Thor Global Defense Group, and they've been willing to work with us. We pay the range fee, and they give us it's BYOB, bring your own bullets, but they'll give us the full autos to shoot, and whenever we schedule this. But I'll tell you what, for people that are wanting to be on the show, the number one thing that they can do that will help me, because this is meant to be a voice for the people, is you can search me on any social media platform, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, with the tag @FreeLibertyTV, or you can email me at freelibertytv@gmail.com and send me a correspondence clip. Honestly, I want people to start sending me 1 to 2 minute clips of their stories, things going on in their area, and if it's funny, if I like it, I'm going to air it on my episode.
It's at Free Liberty TV. We're updating the graphic here on the website. We want to make sure. So that's your Twitter, and that's also is that Instagram and other outlets too? You said.
Yeah, pretty much any of them. You can just type at Free Liberty TV. I managed to stumble across that name. It hasn't been taken in any of them. So
good.
I have a website, freelibertytv.com, but there's nothing up there yet. I've just been so busy with all the other business aspects.
Well, I really hope the YouTube channel takes off for you, Matt. I really do. If I can keep you just a little bit longer, I would love to know. You said you're a new libertarian. I would love to know.
Yeah.
You also said that you went to Bible college. You also said I'm curious. Were you always politically minded? When you were in the ministry, or was it secondary?
Yeah.
Was it the same? What has there been a journey there at all?
Yeah, there has. So my mom spent 16 years in Navy intelligence. So, she's ruined. And ever since high school, watching the news with her was always a trip, because she would know, she knew how to look at things, past the spin.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of how I was raised. And then, all through Bible college, I went to it was a King James, independent, fundamental Baptist. It was as close to military as Bible college could be. And so it was a very conservative thing, and a place. And, that coupled with, my upbringing with my mom made it really hard for me to embrace the whole patriotic Christianity, like assuming that America is like God's gift to the world, and that we can act however we want because of it.
God's kingdom. God's kingdom is God's kingdom, and America's America. They're not the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. But embracing the idea that America is God's kingdom, even though it's not. So I know that. I don't know how to explain it. Basically, that just opened me up to the realization that the world is a really big place. And America is a great country, and so because of that, we have responsibilities that come with the freedoms and things like that we enjoy. Freedom. The American dream is that freedom is possible, not that it would be easy.
Mm-hmm. That's
and
really
so
cool.
that's the things that have led me to be a libertarian.
Wow. Yeah, I can. I certainly identify. That's fantastic. So, we're talking with Matt Giberson. It's at Free Liberty TV. Look him up and go to the YouTube channel. Check out these episodes. One more question, Matt, if you don't mind. What do you think is maybe some of the some of your biggest issues? So some of the biggest problems, or some of the biggest things that you would like to see fixed? When it comes to the status quo now versus where you would maybe want to see the state of Arkansas go, or the national government go. What are some of your biggest issues out there?
Sure. I just feel like we have in the media several several different voices telling us all the same things, just a different way. And the problem is we're not hearing different voices. We're not hearing different issues, especially, the libertarians don't do the best job at presenting themselves, and I feel like that's what turns off a lot of people. So if we can reinvent our identity and make being libertarian sexy, we can attract people to our ideas. The ideas are what are going to get people to stay, because those are the things that made America. Those are the things that made America great. Our ideals of working hard, being independent, self-accountability, things like that. The ideas and the ideals that founded America are the things that the Libertarian Party still holds to. And even though our policies may not always flesh out in a way that the media can make look pretty, I think those ideas are going to be what create legislation that brings about the change that we all want. And so we just have to give that a platform.
Yeah, that is extremely interesting, Matt, and I really appreciate, and I'm really glad that you are, stepping up and trying to make a difference and trying to, get your message out. I think that's encouraging. I think it's encouraging for our listeners to hear. How old are you, Matt?
I will be 31 in 15 days.
Well, then we're just going to go ahead and chalk this up as a young conservative. Well, real quick, libertarian, young libertarian.
I'm not. Hold on. No, I'm like the most liberal conservative ever.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying is. So we have these young conservative segments. So when you say you're like the most liberal conservative, what does that mean? What would that mean to you? Because see, that word conservatism is used in so many different ways. One of my biggest problems is, we can't agree on the definitions of words and phrases, and so the word conservative might get used to amass political power, when in reality, what the constituents think is conservative policy is not at all what the politician thinks is conservative policy. So they use these words to try to gain power. So tell us, what are your thoughts on that?
Sure. Politically, I would consider myself very liberal, even though spiritually I'm conservative. I'll use gay marriage as a good example. I will go toe to toe with any Christian in regards to the lifestyle of homosexuality, but I don't. When it came to gay marriage, I said it this way: if they want to lump themselves into the 50% divorce rate that exists with heterosexual couples, go ahead and let them. If they want to just file their taxes and then end up getting divorced and have to deal with all the litigation that, the conservative religious Christian, group in America, which also has the same divorce rate espouses, then let them. Mm-hmm. Okay? I don't think you can't legislate morality. And if as Christians, we believe that. If we believe that we're supposed to love people, if we believe that, only Jesus can change the heart, why do we want to create legislation? Why don't we actually, take on ourselves the responsibility of being the church and loving those people instead? And, it's statism to, expect the state to handle that whenever it's our responsibility as Christians if we don't agree with them.
I've heard that point of view before, and I understand your skepticism there. My whole thing with the gay marriage thing was with the ruling and everything else. There is no constitutional right for marriage. If anything, it exposed the fact that the government. I don't care if the government tells me I can get married or not. I don't need them to validate my lifestyle. I took vows before God, before my family and friends, and my wife, and it's a religious ceremony. And so now,
exactly.
Yeah. And so to me, and this is kind of, I think, a significant difference, because government has been in charge of, marrying or certifying marriage for a while, or you have the tax code that's now intertwined. It's all one big mess. But if you actually go back to first principles, you're just like, well, why do we even need the government's approval here? They're not really a party that needs to be involved at all with a religious ceremony. And that kind of bleeds over, Matt, into the concept of trying to force a artist, a florist, or a cake baker to participate in what they believe to be a religious ceremony that goes against their religious beliefs. And so it certainly is a very confusing situations, and there's a lot of people out there that, if you want your lifestyle verified by the government, it's very easy to claim victim in a lot of these situations.
Absolutely. And that's why I'm all for it, is because, like you said, the government really shouldn't have their hand in a sacred vow. And this is why I'm so fed up with the government, is because really it boils down to just the money. The only reason that gay couples wanted to get married, I say the only, I can't speak for them. So I'm assuming one of the major reasons was for tax purposes, was for, being able to write somebody into your will, or, a power of attorney, that kind of a thing. That's what and so it was all crutched around sadism.
I would agree with that. The problem that we haven't really, you always talk about the slippery slope. People on the right, they talk, well, this is a slippery slope. I think history is borne out that they're correct. We're going to get to a position now. With the LGBTQ community, and now it's not just I like members of the opposite sex. Now it's like we have to, we're denying biological realities, and there's now a movement to try to go through the American code, the law, and now we have to change. We can't have reference to mom or dad or he or her, and they want to replace all of this with these neutral words. And it's like, well, should we accommodate that? At some point, when do we say, enough's enough? At some point, you got to feel if they keep going the direction they're going, somebody's just going to, there's always going to be somebody else who feels like they're not included or they're not treated fairly. So if that's the case, maybe we've missed something somewhere.
Yeah, I think, we've already given over too much control for it to not come to a point where we're going to have to try and take some back. But, in regards to the slippery slope, I would, and yes, you're right. It is a slippery slope. But this is where my 6 years of studying Scripture comes through. If you actually know the Bible, and you actually know how the story ends, you realize that it's going to get bad no matter what. And so I think in America, honestly, Paul, in America right now, I think Christians are upset because they're being forced to face the reality of living in Babylon. We are more like first century Christians now than we were 25 years ago, because we don't have it as easy as we used to. Back whenever the church first started, if you espoused Christianity, your family had a funeral in your name, and you were cut off from the culture, And here in America, we've enjoyed the liberties to just kind of flaunt lukewarm Christianity, and we're wondering why it didn't yield any results, and we're dealing with the fruit of what we've sown.
Matt, you're speaking a lot of truth right now, and I certainly appreciate everything you just said there, because I can't argue with that. I can't argue with that at all. I appreciate you coming on the program, Matt Giberson. We'll leave it there. It's at Free Liberty TV, and feel free to go check that out and go get the YouTube channel and go check out these interviews. Matt, I appreciate it, sir. Let's do it again soon.
Yeah, look forward to it, Paul. Thank you so much.
All righty, folks, we got to take a break, and we'll be back in just a moment.
This is Representative Dan Sullivan with the Liberty Moment. From the beginning, authors of our Constitution, Bill of Rights, Declaration of Independence, and the Federalist Papers advocated the general election of people who possess wisdom, discernment, and loyalty to their constituents. Why? The people expect their representatives to uphold their promises. The representatives recognize the honor bestowed by these constituents. Advancement comes from their followers, not the government. Elections are frequent, and accountability is a compelling factor to loyalty and support from constituents. From a July 5th, 1929 speech by President Calvin Coolidge. This is Representative Dan Sullivan with the Liberty Moment.
Paid for by Sullivan for Arkansas. Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
So our last guest, Mr. Matt Giverson, with some harsh truths. I thought that was interesting. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't attempt to maintain or secure the liberties that we do have, because they are valuable. And the one thing, I ran out of time in the interview because we had to go to break, and we're about to end the show. But man, I like his perspective, and I like how he is bringing up new topics to discuss. But we have discussed similar topics as to what he was talking about. There's a theologian by the name of Francis Schaeffer who wrote a book called "How Should We Then Live?" And when Francis Schaeffer wrote this book, he wrote it back in 1970, and this was the 74, 75, 76. He had a video series, we've played that for you before, where he talked about because of Roe versus Wade, it's obvious that the Christian consensus of our country has now ended. It's now over because Roe versus Wade was made legal. And he was speaking a lot of these truths back in the 70s. And, you know, when Matt talked about first century Christianity versus, you know, where we are today, when the whole question of the book, from a Christian perspective, from a Christian biblical worldview, is how should we then live if you are now in an environment where you have more and more immorality around you and more immoral people around you. You're inevitably going to have larger and larger and larger government that has to grow to deal with the immoral people, but then the immoral people always find a way to break the law, so then you need more government to come in and deal with the immoral people. And the left in this country is very much responsible for some of this, because they have been saying for a long time, we need no moral compass in our schools. We need no government telling kids what's right or wrong. And then we're surprised when we have more and more people breaking the laws. But then the left, they've got the solution, right? More government to take care of people, and then more immorality, more law breaking, more government to come make new laws. We'll fix it this time. We might talk more about this tomorrow. Have a great day, folks. Arkansas, be safe.
The news and talk of